My name is Sheila Patel. I am the chair of Slum Dwellers International, a transnational organization that has 33 national federations of slum dwellers as members. My lecture today is to introduce to you the federation model of community organizing. Shack Dwellers or Slum Dwellers International promotes the rights of poor to represent themselves as stakeholders and people involved in the transformation of their own neighborhoods and their cities. Yet, in most instances, they are treated as beneficiaries, as inhabitants of terrible places who have no contribution to make to this process. A very important part of their transformation is to create conditions by which they are taken as serious interventionists in the process of developing their cities. Now, cities today, especially in the global south, are full of legislation that is like 18th century. It makes all people who live in informal settlements and work in informal livelihoods illegal, unacceptable, and those that have no right to the city. You have situations where 15 to sometimes 75% of the city living informally, working in informal occupations, and are completely outside the realm of development investment of that city. And so as this population keeps growing and keeps getting neglected, the challenge we face today globally is how are we going to deal with future growth of urbanization when we can't even deal with the situation as it is today. So Slum or Shack Dwellers International, or SDI as I will call them from now onwards, seeks to create large networks at city levels that comprise of all informal settlements so that they can create the critical mass that's necessary to be taken seriously and be given attention to when they ask for participating in the development of the city. Now, this is not an easy task because the perception of the city about poor people is very different from this emerging and evolving and changing self-image that people have of themselves. And so the most interesting and significant way to explain how this transformation occurs is to look at the way in which the communities of the poor collect data about themselves. We call this process enumeration. It is data about informal settlements, about households that live in informal settlements, and about individuals who live in these households. But the most politically and strategically placed of all these enumeration processes is the survey of informal settlements. It started off by communities and their leaders documenting the situation of their settlement. How big it is, how many people live there, of what amenities and services they have, how many evictions they faced, and their transport, their livelihood. It's like a register of the status of their settlements. And by collecting data about each and every settlement, they produce an informal settlements map of the city. The second kind of data that we collect is household data. Now, many times researchers are very dismissive of poor people collecting this data, worried about the accuracy of it, worried about the subjectivity of the people who are collecting the data. But the beauty of the data that poor people collect about themselves is that this data is about the structures in which they live, where they work, what they do, who lives with them, specific and clear things that they record about their lives. And this process has a range of rituals. It starts off with numbering every single structure so that every household is ensured that their house is included in the process. So the second thing that they do is that they draw maps. So they're little boxes, and inside the boxes are the numbers that they have put on their structure. And then this number is put on the survey questionnaire so that it links the house structure to the map and to the survey form. And community people go and they've tried to look at ways by which all of them collect data about themselves. So initially, everything was hand-drawn, everything was tentative. But gradually, as digital technology has become accessible, women have learned to map the houses, the slum boundaries, and so their data has begun to get more and more accurate. And so taking maps, digital maps of their cities, they can now locate their informal settlements on this map, and wherever necessary, go deeper into the households within the settlements. And so visually looking at where the settlements are located, what is the land ownership structure, how many toilets are there, all these things become visually accessible to them so that they can decide what are the priorities they want. Plus, when they go to the municipality, it produces a very clear-cut, evidence-based representation of who they are and what they want from the city. So at the end of all this documentation, the most important thing is that every household becomes visible. Their federations give them an identity card. That identity card has a number that links them to their house number, to the map, and to a register that they have of all the names. So the documentation that emerges from this is very important to the communities themselves because it produces a document that they can put out whenever anybody asks. Because in most of our countries, we don't have national ID cards. So there's a photograph of the family. They have the number that is available also in the register on their house and in the map. So it's a way of giving their structure and their family a visible presence. Now, lots of people would say, so what? I mean, why should you do it? Well, the first most proud thing that we are about this process is that the first name in this documentation is that of a woman. And her family and the community accept that she should be the first name, we call them the female head of the household. And so they have this documentation. And what I want to do from now is to give you an interesting set of examples that shows the power of SDI producing solutions and demonstrating their capacity to operate at scale. So this example is about railway slums. In most of our countries, there are encroachments of railway lands and there are slums which are very close to active tracks. And the railway is constantly trying to evict them, but because they don't have an alternative, they keep rebuilding. And so in India, in the country from where I come, we have a famous cartoonist who said that it's easier to move the tracks than to move people. But when the government was planning to improve these tracks, we came forward, showed our documentation of slums along the railway track, and offered to find relocation for all the households that needed to be moved, provided the community federation supported by some professionals would do it. And so between 2000 and 2008, 18,000 households were relocated in Mumbai. In 2005, the Kenyan Railways was going to be privatized and there were evictions along the railway track. The Kenyan affiliate of SDI then sought the advice of their Indian counterpart and based on the dialogue took Kenyan railway officials and government officials to Mumbai to look at how this process had been done. And so today, as we speak, the first 2,000 households are moving into their new houses and moving away from the track. Here comes the third part of this. We have a federation in Ghana who are getting aware of the fact that the railways in Ghana are also planning to do some evictions. At the time of this recording, we had the member federation from Ghana coming to Nairobi saying Let us go and look at what the federations did here in order to produce a negotiation that replaced the eviction with a negotiated relocation. And so as a result of this, there's a plan for the Ghana Federation to bring their government officials and their railway officials to Kenya or to India or to both places to then encourage them to explore this option. Now, what we believe as a result of these kinds of stories is that good quality data that is collected by communities has amazing range of possibilities of what it can do to contribute to development. And based on this potential, SDI has set up a city campaign called Know Your City. It encourages community federations and mayors to work together to map all the informal settlements and to use them as a benchmark to start looking at the kinds of development investments the city can make and the kinds of contributions slum dwellers themselves can make. Because in the end, the habitat story is about solutions that come from communities, the city, the state. And the important part of this is that if we want the cities of the future to be really inclusive and to be comprehensive in the investments that they make to make everybody's life better, then it starts with good quality data that can be looked at, disaggregated, aggregated based on what the needs are. So SDI's deep commitment is to produce a global organization that can champion and voice and represent the needs and aspirations of poor people at the global level, but with deep accountability to local and subnational issues that have to be addressed on the ground. So when delegates from SDI, who are community leaders from all these countries, come to global events, they all meet their representatives at these global events and try and demonstrate to them that they are a new powerful force. And many of these engagements have led to amazing programs on the ground. But going back to the concept of the federation model, what we want to bring to the notice of various stakeholders who are involved in transforming cities is, unless solutions are looked at scale, there can be no change in the status quo of our cities. Yet you require those large numbers to feel organized, empowered, and knowledgeable so that they can participate in the solution. So coming back to what I began with, which is this new model of federated communities at city levels being a new actor on the development stage of finding sustainable solutions for cities. It's very, very important that this kind of process be understood, and resources and legitimacy to help organize people at this level through a methodology that we have evolved as SDI be recognized. Not because we developed it, but because it is so strategic in the fact that it helps poor people to develop their own organization, to work internally to produce their internal governance so that priorities that impact all of them become what they negotiate with the city, and for them to produce solutions in which they can take part. After all, it is the energy of people that will transform cities, and therefore creating methods or creating models or creating institutional arrangements that allow them to play this role is a very important breakthrough, which I hope you will embrace.